Hi, thanks for joining our webinar on coordinating management disciplines. My name is Mark Steinbacher and I'm a Senior Solution Architect with Software AG and have some experience in a number of these management disciplines, including enterprise architecture, data management, and application performance management. So I've seen how many of these operate in the enterprise. Let's get started. Here's what we're going to cover today. First, we'll take a look at the current state of how many government organizations make use of management disciplines. Then take a quick look at a vision state for getting the most out of these management disciplines. From there, I'll go over how that vision state facilitates more fully informed decision-making through open and timely information sharing. And finally, we'll take a deeper dive into the multidiscipline information sharing model or framework. So, on to current state. Here's the situation. As you probably know, there's a number of management disciplines typically in place in most agencies and departments. You see a few examples here, such as enterprise architecture, data management, business process management, etc. All of them typically under the guidance of the C-suite, and each oversee critical enterprise assets and focus on a particular area of the enterprise. Again, these are just some samples of typical management disciplines in an organization. The challenge with these disciplines is often being able to get the most out of them, as they rightly focus on their missions, but often lack a holistic view of the enterprise, which can result in situations where decisions might be made in a silo without accounting for other aspects or areas of the enterprise that could be adversely affected. For example, let's say that a successful application rationalization initiative has identified that there are several CRM systems being used throughout the agency and recommends that the most prevalent one be the standard, and all the others are migrated to this one. But what was not considered was the application's performance, which the application performance management discipline has measures and metrics showing that its performance lags many of the other applications, and further, user satisfaction is very low. So even though the environment would be simplified, without information sharing that accounts for all perspectives, the agency could have achieved a less complex architecture, a good thing, but also less productive or happy users. Probably not a good trade-off. Of course, this is not to say that there isn't intercommunications that goes on, and some agencies and departments do better than others. But without a more formal and standard mechanism in place for information sharing, it increases the likelihood that things can fall through the cracks. Also consider, due to the multiple control and management mandates placed upon the agencies and departments, the challenge of being able to efficiently report on the ecosystem with a siloed model. So what's the solution? Well, as you may have surmised by the title of this webinar, it's all about creating a collaborative, cross-discipline operating model, one enabled by a robust information sharing mechanism. This shared operating model is what I call collaborative enterprise management, or CEM. The approach with this being that within the context of and alignment to the overall vision, mission, and strategy of an organization, each discipline focuses upon its mission, but also shares their information that is both essential and helpful to the other disciplines. In order for this to work, it needs some key enablers. Obviously, a central location where this information sharing can occur, as well as an agreed-to common vocabulary that gets everyone on the same page, avoiding the jargon of one discipline causing misunderstandings with others. And then finally, it really is about an open sharing culture. In other words, it's no longer on a need-to-know basis, but a need-to-share basis cultural shift. This shift, for example, is recognized by the DoD as essential. As it is stated in their data strategy, published in September of 2020, a core guiding principle for the department is enterprise-wide data access and availability, which is further described as a shift from a need-to-know to a responsibility to provide. This, of course, still accounts for assuring appropriate levels of confidentiality and protection, but points to the recognition that the availability of information is essential to all aspects of an enterprise. And finally, holding it all together, enterprise architecture, which acts as the central integration point and represents the core of the shared operating model. This hub and spoke model is governed by a few core operating principles to make sure that it functions effectively. First is what I mentioned previously, in that enterprise architecture management acts as the hub, and it is there to ensure that the need to share is possible, as it acts as a kind of clearinghouse or broker, if you will, as it is the collector and distributor of the information. The second is that EAM therefore becomes a system of reference for all the spoke management disciplines, while the system of record remains within each respective spoke management discipline. To be clear, all disciplines are of equal importance, which is why they continue to maintain the source of truth for their respective assets. By assigning EA the role of information broker, this allows all disciplines to access a single point of contact for this sharing model. Thereby, each discipline and the enterprise as a whole gain in efficiencies in both contributing and retrieving of information. So every discipline will execute on their mission, enriching their data in a manner that's important for them to effectively manage their particular asset area, but shares information that is relevant to the other disciplines through the enterprise architecture hub. Also, recall I mentioned the reporting challenge with a siloed environment? Another key advantage of establishing this single system of reference for an agency or department is in its reporting requirements or integration opportunities outside the organization. This includes the requirements due to mandates and programs, such as the Federal Information Technology Acquisition Reform Act, FTARA, and the Technology Modernization Fund, TMF, or integrating the agency's IT portfolio with GSA's Folio portfolio management system. All of these are made easier by utilizing the single system of reference versus needing to pull from all the disciplines' repositories. And again, I can't emphasize enough that this is about the disciplines sharing information, not giving up control of that information. So the primary benefit of this collaborative enterprise management approach is that it facilitates what we're calling value conversations. These value conversations are cross-discipline interactions where you're discussing critical enterprise topics. So this one-way of working approach is an avenue for each discipline to bring their contributions to the table, and by bringing all these different perspectives to the table, you're able to make much better business decisions because possible solutions are weighed against the impact across the entire ecosystem, which also results in minimizing unintended consequences, such as the application rationalization example I gave earlier, that simplified the architecture, but with the unintended consequence of dissatisfied users. The best decisions made in silos often will have an impact to another area that was not accounted for. But by having these value conversations, this possibility of unintended consequences is minimized. So it's all about getting these cogs to work together, with enterprise architecture interconnecting all the disciplines so that all of them are working together as a very cohesive, efficient, and effective system. So what are these value conversations? Again, I mentioned that they are critical topic-based conversations with the right players involved, all brought to the table at the same time to ensure that you're getting the highest value business decisions. Let's take a little closer look at this. These value conversations are really intended to enable coordinated change by using the shared operating model. They act as a forum for surfacing unconsidered needs due to the other perspectives being brought to bear when an issue is discussed. And again, as I mentioned before, it's a mechanism to avoid those unintended consequences because you're accounting for all the dimensions and perspectives that are important for a holistic business enterprise level decision. Here are some examples of typical conversations. As you see, these are broad-based topics that affect the enterprise as a whole and require accounting for multiple perspectives. Let's look at each example. Let's start with reducing operating costs. So let's take a look at reducing operating costs. Application rationalization is a good example of this. Obviously a conversation that has far-reaching impact across the entire enterprise. All the more reason to bring multiple perspectives to the table. For example, obviously the chief financial officer who knows the budget, the cost savings goals, and can provide both historical costs and income forecasts, those types of things. The chief business officer or program executive office who really understands where the critical operations are and whether they are candidates for cost reduction, or whether it'd be high risk to try to reduce cost in those areas. The chief information officer provides insights into the technologies, their life cycles, which ones help move you towards a more efficient operational model, what are the trends in technologies, etc. And the chief enterprise architect, who brings the glue to the whole thing, who understands all the costs related to business capability delivery and where those costs are really coming from, even down to the level of specific applications, as well as an understanding of the life cycle of applications and which are due to be retired, replaced, or otherwise removed from the system. All of this enables you to make cost reduction decisions without adversely impacting areas that really needed something that wasn't accounted for. So now, you don't need to make broad-based cost-cutting decisions such as the everyone gets a haircut approach, but you really are able to focus on what is really needed and what is critical before making those cost-cutting decisions. Another thing to keep in mind is the reporting requirements stipulated by FTARA, that agencies track and report on cost savings as part of an agency scorecard. This scorecard reporting, by the way, that has gone from annually to quarterly, is greatly simplified by leveraging the single source of reference that the collaboration model provides. Okay, let's go back to the examples. Let's jump to the cybersecurity. Minimizing cybersecurity threats is a very common conversation that would require the perspective of multiple individuals. In this case, for example, you have the Chief Information Security Officer bringing to the table an understanding of what are the threats and risks that are currently of concern as far as either occurring or making sure that they don't happen. The Director of Policy and Planning bringing to the table an understanding of the laws, regulations, and policies that must be abided by. And the Chief Data Officer who provides the scope of where sensitive data is, or which data is actually sensitive and needs to be protected. And of course, the Chief Enterprise Architect, who brings it all together and can help provide the view of the entire ecosystem landscape of both how that data moves as well as where it actually resides, to give that full picture. And the benefits of getting everyone together is you enable the creation of holistic security master and mitigation plans. And you can document how the enterprise architecture complies or doesn't fully comply with those plans. Further, you can quickly see now the whole attack surface, if you will, of where all your sensitive data is, and be able to create a defensible disposal policy using fact-based informed decisions regarding which data can be safely disposed of because it's either accounted for somewhere else or truly is no longer needed, thereby reducing storage requirements and thereby cost, but also reducing the attack surface, which lowers the risk of actual sensitive data exposure in the case of a breach. Another thing to keep in mind is FTARA reporting. Along with the required tracking and reporting of costs as part of an agency scorecard is an equal emphasis on the agency's cybersecurity profile and readiness, which is also enabled and simplified by this collaboration approach. Consider the recent SolarWinds breach. Having a single place to go to quickly determine the impact across the entire enterprise avoids the need to put out an urgent data call to all the disciplines to assess the scope of the impact, saving valuable time and mobilizing to mitigate the damage. So that's the security. Let's go back to the examples. As a final example, let's look at modernization. So let's look at leveraging technology for digital modernization. As you already know, digital transformation is one of the key and prime drivers causing change across the government and across most industries. Case in point, the Modernizing Government Technology Act of 2017 that authorized a new funding model with the Technology Modernization Fund, or the DoD's Digital Modernization Strategy published in 2019. These are just two examples of the importance modernization is to the federal government. And understanding how to leverage technology in the best manner to do that requires different perspectives. As far as players, the line of business executive or chief business officer brings the insights into what constituents really want and need, as well as the different citizen segments and delivery channels on which to focus. With the chief information officer, able to provide insights into the technologies that can support these digital wants and needs. and what it would take potentially to migrate to these technologies and move off of non-digital platforms to something more digitally enabled. And then finally, the chief enterprise architect who brings it all together, conveying what it would take to migrate and transform the enterprise architecture itself to meet those digital requirements. The benefits you gain are getting insights into maturity of current applications and technology inventories and how they can enable digital delivery. You can document the current state of the digital transformation and be able to publicize and follow along with the migration plans for all the applications and technologies contributing to that transformation. And it supports pragmatic decision making in that now you can decide what applications are best suited and identify the ones least suited for digital delivery, thereby enabling informed application rationalization decisions. You also gain insights into the timings of necessary retirements and upgrades. Further, this can simplify planning through identifying applications not conducive to digital, but are being retired soon anyway, so likely don't need a detailed removal plan, versus those that need more planning because they had been slated to be in production for many more years. Being able to evaluate and look at that level of impact is very helpful and conducive to informed decisions, which is the desired outcome of this type of conversation. Now, consider that initiatives such as data center consolidations or cloud migrations resulting from this conversation appear well suited for funding by the TMF, which has recently had a $1 billion infusion signed into law with the American Rescue Plan, by the way. Having this holistic view of cross-discipline impact feeds nicely into presenting a strong business case as part of a full project proposal pitch deck to the TMF, providing solid justification for the funding request. And this holistic view further simplifies the ongoing required reporting on the success of the modernization initiatives. Let's head back to the conversation slide. So that gives you an idea of what conversations might look like and their benefits. So now let's revisit the collaboration framework to get an idea of how the disciplines interact and share information. So let's take a look now at the actual collaboration model framework. It really is a way to ensure that the information sharing is a two-way street, using EA essentially as the clearinghouse or broker for getting information to and from each respective discipline. Let's take a look at this in the next slide. So here's the vision of what the collaborative enterprise management framework or ecosystem could look like. Each of the management disciplines you can kind of think of as satellite disciplines surrounding enterprise architecture, with each contributing to a single pane of glass view by providing their perspective and their critical aspects or assets to the sharing repository managed by EA. For example, program/project management contributes the change efforts and initiatives that are going on, that type of thing. This framework shows 8 disciplines, but these again are just representative samples to give you an idea of how you would go ahead and share information in a two-way manner. So let's click on a few to see some examples of the information sharing and its benefits. I'm going to start over here with information/data management. So let's talk a bit about how enterprise architecture and data management collaborate to see how information sharing about these assets benefits both. And in this case, it's all about the data assets themselves, the information flows representing data movement, and the data repositories representing where data is housed. What you're getting is a clear understanding of usage, redundancies, and potential inefficiencies in data sharing. So the information typically shared by data management with enterprise architecture is the conceptual objects and their associated attributes. That is, the canonical model, if you will, as well as the instantiated representation of the conceptual objects, the actual data dictionary level entities and attributes, that is, tables and columns, and where that data resides. And data management receives from enterprise architecture things like the specific applications that house and use these data assets, as well as the information flow showing how data is going not only back and forth between applications, but also how and where it is used by different business processes. All critical information for understanding the data landscape. And the value resulting from this sharing includes ensuring standard and consistent terminology, as the business terms are defined by data management and shared with enterprise architecture management, which in turn is shared across the enterprise, thereby ensuring that everyone starts using the same terminology. You're also getting a very clear and quick picture of where all your sensitive data, the data that needs protecting, resides, which provides insight into the size and scope of the potential attack surface and the associated level of risk. This also supports the creation of defensible disposal policies, because you now have the information you need to comfortably defend the removal of data and enables you to more accurately target the specific data locations and transfers that make the most sense for removal or consolidation. Let's hop back to the framework. So that was data management. As another example, let's take a look at business process management. So this example takes a look at business process management and enterprise architecture. And you can see on the left is the business processes and value streams inventories that are typically shared by the BPM folks with enterprise architecture. And enterprise architecture provides the application inventory back to the business process folks to understand the usage of applications within the different processes, as well as potentially the application lifecycle for insight into what's being retired. So that could be accounted for in the business process design. Speaking of process design, I just want to pause here a second and talk about what is typically not shared and why. All disciplines, out of necessity, maintain very detailed information about their assets. In the case of BPM, for example, that would be the process design. That is, the process model of all the activities and their sequence. This model is essential for performing process improvement analysis or process mining, as well as for translation into actual process execution. But most other disciplines don't need that detail, but would benefit from having a complete view of the entire enterprise business process inventory. This is what I meant by each discipline focuses on detailed information to execute their mission, but only needs to share the big picture type information for others to account for in their decision making. Now, back to the value and benefits. Obviously, exposing the business process's contribution to the business capabilities gives a clear picture of what's involved to deliver each capability. Being able to align enterprise architecture elements, like applications, to the processes they are enabling brings even further depth to that capability analysis. And you can also compare the application service offerings used by different business processes, allowing you to gain insights into which applications are contributing the most to the processes. Oh, and which ones are contributing the least for potential consolidation opportunities. Further, you can assess and identify the key applications and services provided to the overall business process operating model, based upon use and prevalence by the full suite of business processes throughout the organization. These are just some examples of this collaboration. Let's head back to the framework. So let's take a look at one more example. Let's look at API management. This is the collaboration between enterprise architecture management and API management. In their collaboration, again, the idea is that by incorporating the technical services managed by API management into the full business services inventory of applications managed by enterprise architecture management, you start to see what business services are supported by APIs, and quite frankly, which services are not supported by APIs. So, if you look at it from an API management perspective, it's sharing the API catalog along with the operations provided by each API, which is essential for gaining that holistic picture of the business processes and business capabilities utilizing APIs. And in return, it brings back the application inventory to provide a clear picture of the business services provided by those applications and which use APIs to do that, thereby giving API management a clear picture of where APIs might be needed or are most useful and identify where they are lacking. This also provides insight into how APIs benefit or contribute to executing a particular business capability. This helps API management understand the reach and usage of the API inventory, providing clues that help in prioritizing the development of APIs. Let's go back to the framework. So those are just a few examples, but what about others not represented here? Let's take a look at that. As I mentioned, the disciplines identified on the framework are just representative examples as far as how to interact and collaborate, leveraging enterprise architecture for information sharing. The framework is built to be open and scalable and supports incorporation of any management discipline that might be important to you or is critical as part of your enterprise collaboration. Say, for instance, vendor management or license management. It is easy to add a discipline to this collaboration model. A good starting point for initiating a new collaboration is to create a kind of memorandum of understanding, if you will, using this template to clearly define up front what is being shared by both sides, thereby identifying the initial collaboration requirements. This provides for a clear understanding by all parties what each discipline is going to get out of this collaboration, as well as their contribution responsibility. And by further articulating the value and benefit of incorporating the discipline into the framework, it establishes a strong business case for adding it to the overall collaboration model. Let's do a quick example. First, let's pick a discipline. I'm going to use IoT. The first step is to figure out exactly what it is that the two disciplines want to share with each other. In this case, it really is about the devices managed by IoT. From there, give some thought as to what is the overall or overarching value as far as why you want to link these two together. And let's fill that in. We decided on emphasizing the ability to proactively maintain the devices. Now, let's give some thought to what is shared by IoT with enterprise architecture management. Pretty straightforward. It's the device inventory. Now, thinking about it from an enterprise architecture perspective, what is shared back to IoT are some key characteristics of the devices, their life cycle, their vendors, planned software updates, that type of thing. So, it's the things that are shared. From there, let's consider who the primary stakeholders involved might be. Well, obviously it's the operation manager and the IoT asset team, but also both the investment manager and risk manager would benefit from and participate in this collaboration. Finally, let's identify some key business benefits that this collaboration will generate to use as a basis for the business case for this integration. These few emphasize the full line of sight capability the organization will achieve, as well as being proactive in keeping operations running. So, that's a quick example of adding a discipline to the framework. As a final note, tools that enable the sharing and collection of the information you need to justify decisions and budgets are essential for ensuring the collaboration of the management disciplines is not only effective, but highly efficient as well. Software AG provides a number of platforms as shown here, already integrated and interoperable, that can get you started or help you continue on this collaborative journey. So I want to thank you for taking the time today to listen to this talk. We've come to the end of this overview of value conversations and the benefits of the collaborative enterprise management framework, namely the efficiencies and effectiveness gains in impact analysis, speed to response, and meeting required reporting requirements. And I hope you found this informative and helpful. Again, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And please let us know your thoughts and what we can do to help. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.